Hello and welcome to the first edition of Mariner Minute. My name is Sam Gray and I will be talking to you today. So today I want to talk about free agents, particularly the Mariners. We can all agree that the Mariners had a tough year last year, and you know what? I think they're on the rise. Let's talk about who they should target. There are a lot of free agents this year, but not in a lot of the areas that we need. So I made a list of 5 plus 1 extra that I think that they should target. The first free agent that I think they should go after is Hisashi Iwakuma. Everybody knows Hisashi Iwakuma. He was very solid for us for the past couple years, posting an ERA of 3.54, but overall I think that he's a good bet for us. We need a good number 2 starter, and even though he got hurt last year and has been hurt recently, I think overall he fills a good void for us. He's a consistent guy. He doesn't walk a lot of guys. He has a pretty low pitch count overall, and is pretty good for quite a few innings every year, averaging right around 214 innings per 162 games. Last year he was only able to put up 129 innings, but it's not surprising due to the fact that he was injured. He had that blister on his finger. I think that overall we could get him pretty cheap. I heard actually that they were offering him a 2-year deal. I saw somewhere, I don't know exactly where, but hopefully that's something that they're actually serious about. I think that since we've got a rotation already set of Felix, somebody who's going to be named later, hopefully Paxton if he can get healthy, then Taijuan Walker, and then who knows who that 5th guy could be. But definitely want to have Iwakuma in that mix. Overall, our starting pitching last year was fine. It was our bullpen that really killed us, and unfortunately there's not a lot of good bullpen guys out there. We could pick up somebody like Mark Lowe, who we had for part of the year last year, but in the end, we're just going to have to pick up some no-name guys and probably pick up some prospects and hope that we can develop them. We got rid of Danny Farquhar, but we're going to need better years from somebody like Tom Wilhelmsen and get them to step up. So the number 2 guy that I think they could target, which is a bit of a pipe dream, is Chris Davis. I know that people will say we already have Mark Trumbo at first, but let's be honest. Mark Trumbo's not really a first baseman. He's a DH at best. He's the kind of guy that's going to get hot, but he's going to be very, very streaky. Whereas Chris Davis is going to be more consistent. Although Chris Davis is pretty streaky, he went very cold, not last year, but the year before that, and part of the beginning of this last year. He still is a pretty solid defensive first baseman, and has a very high walk rate with 12.5%, which was 13th in baseball last year. That's something that the Mariners need, somebody who can get on base. One of the biggest knocks on our team was that we would have guys who would strike out too often or just couldn't find a way to get on base when we needed them to. I think Chris Davis, if he can get on base, he also provides that pop. He's a really strong number 3, number 4 hitter, and if we could pair him with Robinson Cano, Nelson Cruz, and even Kyle Seager, we could get a really strong middle of the lineup. I think having him instead of Mark Trumbo would be ideal. I don't think that we can pull it off. I think that Jerry Dipoto is going to have some money to work with, but somebody like Chris Davis is going to command top dollar, coming off 47 home runs this last year and 53 3 years ago. Over the last 3 years, he's hit 159 home runs. That's the most of anybody in baseball, even with a weak year in the middle. 53 and 47 home runs, that's no joke. That's real power. And the Orioles don't play in a small ballpark. It's not like he's doing it for the Yankees. He's a lefty, which we could definitely use a little bit more left-hand power since we've got a shallower right field fence than left field. I think that he may not get on base as much as we want, which is what we really need, but I think that adding some more power and a true first baseman will be a good idea. We saw that the Mariners were willing to give up on somebody like Logan Morrison. I don't think that Mark Trumbo is going to be enough. I think that Mark Trumbo, when he's good, is a 260 hitter, maybe 25 homers, but he's a liability in defense. Not quite as bad as when we had Kendrys Morales, but still pretty bad. I think Chris Davis, it's going to be a long shot to try to get him, but overall, he would be a good pickup. I know he had quite a few appearances in right field and at third base, but, we've got right field pretty much set with Nelson Cruz and some Seth Smith. And third base, we've got Kyle Seager, so I'm not too worried about that. We do need just a true first baseman. And the beauty is he can play first base. He's not just another DH that we're throwing out at first base. So number 3 is going to be Justin Upton. So we all remember that Justin Upton had a bit of a snafu when we tried to trade for him, and he said no. He decided that he wanted to stay with Arizona and did not want to come to Seattle. Well, he's a free agent now. After his lackluster year with the San Diego Padres, he had 251 and only had, 26 home runs, which is actually his average, so not too bad a home run year. I think that overall he's the kind of guy we need a left fielder, and he can play either corner or outfield position. And I think that as much as I like Seth Smith and how he's a professional hitter, I don't think he's an everyday left fielder. I think he's a good platoon guy that we can platoon out there with Nelson Cruz. Overall, I think he's a good defensive player. He's not great, but he can play defense. And he's got a decently high on-base percentage, 352, which isn't great, but it's okay. It'll get the job done. It's better than what we were getting out of Dustin Ackley and the little bit of Seth Smith that we saw. So overall, I think it's an improvement. He's proven to get hot. He had 2 years ago he had 101 RBI or 102 RBI and 29 homers. And he's had a couple good seasons. I think that overall he would be a really good addition. Even though he is coming off the tough year with San Diego, I think that he could succeed here. I don't know how badly he actually wants to be here, though. That would be the biggest thing, is making him happy. If he's not happy, he's not going to play well. We've seen that people get that stigma about Seattle and just don't play well when they come here. And overall, that's not going to be good if he comes here unhappy. So we got to make sure that we can make him happy in whatever way possible. So unfortunately, that is basically the end of our big-name free agents. The next one, which really hurts me to say, is I think we got to bring back John Jaso. John Jaso is an interesting guy. He's a decent hitter. Last year he played actually pretty well. He hit 286, but he only played in 70 games. And they were all mostly at DH for the Tampa Bay Rays. We had him for a short time in 2012, but overall he's a pretty decent hitter. He hits around 263, and even though he's a DH for the most part, I think we need to put him at catcher. He's not a great catcher. I can totally admit that, and we just have to accept that we need a guy who can hit. We don't necessarily need a guy who can catch like Mike Zunino can. Mike Zunino's got to prove himself that he can actually hit at the major league level before we can give him his starting job, and at the moment we don't have any other catchers. We saw that we can produce catchers who can play defensively, but a guy was about to put up one of the worst seasons batting in the history of the MLB. That's just embarrassing. We cannot have that on a team that wants to make the playoffs. I don't care how good his defense is. I love Mike Zunino. I love his power. I love his defense. I love how he's able to help a pitcher. But I cannot handle a guy who's batting under $180 consistently. no matter how many home runs he's hitting. He didn't even, last year, he only hit something like 12 home runs. The previous year he had 20, which is one of the reasons we were okay with him batting $199, was that he was good for a long ball every once in a while. But he also does not get on base when he's not getting hits, and that's not okay. We've got too many guys who know how to strike out, know how to hit the ball hard, and that's it. We need guys who can get on base, and John Jaso knows how to get on base. His on-base percentage last year with that 286 average was 380. We don't have a guy like that. We need that kind of on-base percentage. Even Nelson Cruz, with his high average, wasn't a great on-base guy. He had a tendency to strike out. And John Jaso is not a flashy name, not going to give you great defense at catcher, but you know what? He can help you get the job done. And until Mike Zunino can prove himself, I think you got to platoon him. It's one of the reasons that the Wellington Castillo thing hurt so badly. There's such a weak class of catchers right now that we need somebody who can come in. And I saw that we're close to signing Chris Iannetta, and I don't think he's the guy. I think John Jaso could do the job. So my number 5 guy who's also not exciting is Chris Young. No, not the pitcher, the New York outfielder. So he can play all 3 outfield positions, and that versatility is something we need, especially somebody who can play center field. He's not really a true center fielder, but he's an athlete nonetheless. And you know what? We need more athletes on this team. He's not a great hitter. He had 252 last year in 140 games, and I would expect that number would go down in a big ballpark like Safeco. But even if he could put up 240, we need somebody who is physically capable of occupying that center field every day. I don't think Franklin Gutierrez can do that anymore. I think Franklin Gutierrez can platoon in left or right field. But we don't need any more platoon guys. We need a true center fielder. And as much as it hurts, we don't have that guy right now. I'd like to see them try Ketel Marte in center more, but then that leaves us with a hole at shortstop, and we've seen Chris Taylor is not the answer there. We traded Brad Miller. He was our center fielder for once we traded Austin Jackson. So the minute that we lose our only center fielder, we don't have anybody else. We had Dustin Ackley play some. He's a Yankee. We had Brad Miller play some. He's a Ray. We had Austin Jackson play some. He's a free agent. Doesn't look like we're going to pick him back up, and I don't think he's really a good guy for us. But overall, I think Chris Young could fill the hole that we need to have filled. And now I want to move on to my dream guy, Jason Heyward. Now, I don't think the Mariners have any possibility of pulling that off, but I think that he's such an athlete, and man, does he know how to get on base. I think that he would be a great addition to the Mariners. I think because he's so athletic, you could probably teach him to play center field. Maybe he could just be a left fielder. I know he's traditionally a right fielder, but overall, I don't think there would be a big difference in trying to teach him left field. He's still 26, so he's still got plenty of learning in him. I think that overall, he would be the kind of guy that we really need, but those kind of dollars, we just don't have them right now. He would probably demand over $200 million, and we've already got big contracts with Cano, with Cruz, with Seager, with Felix, but we've still got so many holes. One of the things that the great teams can do is that they can fill those holes, and we cannot fill them right now. We don't have anybody in the farm system right now who's going to help us out, which is why we got to go big with free agents, but free agents are expensive. We've got the biggest budget that we've had in a while, and it's just not working out. So I think overall what's going to happen is that I honestly think that the only person from this list that is probably going to get picked up is Hisashi Iwakuma. I think Hisashi wants to stay in Seattle, at least from everything I've heard, that's what he wants. I think the Mariners want to keep him. I don't think that they have any interest in any of these other guys. I mean, I think that they realize that it would be great to have a guy like Chris Davis, but we've already got a bunch of mediocre first basemen. We've got DJ Peterson, who's struggling. We've got Patrick Kivlahan, that's struggling. We've got Mark Trumbo, who's struggling. We've got Jesus Montero, who's struggling. We don't need to throw in another first baseman, because then those 4 guys are all for nothing. And I hate to break it to you, DJ Peterson looked like garbage last year. I watched him play a little bit. He just doesn't look like he knows what he's doing anymore. He had such a great year the year before. For him to just fall off the face of the earth was ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. But, that happens to prospects as they're moving up. Something doesn't click. Sometimes they just have bad years. I know Edgar Martinez said that when he was working early, he was not that good. And he needed a lot of help, and it took him a while to get in the groove of it. But I don't know how common it is for a guy to start so well and then fall off the face of the earth. I mean, the guy hit .214 with, I think, 10 home runs after hitting almost 300 and blasting over 30 the year before. Granted, that was split between single A and double A, but his numbers weren't that much worse in double A. And a guy who can't hit double A pitching sure can't hit major league pitching. I know he got moved up to AAA to try to shake things up a little bit, and I think he got hurt at the end of the year. But he has a long way to go still. I know people had this idea that this would be the year that he could come up. I don't think he's ready. Honestly, I didn't think Ketel Marte was ready. But we got to fill these holes, and right now, these are the only guys that can fill them. So, thank you for listening to the first edition of Mariner Minute. Have a good night.